Let's welcome in our good friend Bob Vanderplot, sitting there in my seat in our, we hope, no longer wasp-infested studio, but because temps are in the 80s and I'm unsure, I'm here at my house. Good to see you again, Bob. How are you, brother?
I'm doing really well. No wasps here so far. But, Steve, I do want to ask you, because now that I'm in your chair, I'm going to ask you a question, is that you're up in Minnesota yesterday watching the Vikings and the Lions. Mm-hmm. And I know your Lions beat my Vikings by 2. Really good game. You guys had to be excited about the game.
It was a great game. Yeah, great game.
My question is, does Governor Tim Walz, does his policies go all the way into the Viking Stadium there? Did you get to choose which restroom you wanted to use, or the things in the men's restroom?
There was none of that, actually. And I got to tell you, man, the stadium, as I said this at the top of the show, brother, it was first class.
Oh, it's a great stadium.
I mean, it was first class. Frankly, the best chicken tenders I've had in my entire life were at that stadium yesterday.
So were you in one of the suites then?
I wanted, it's my son. I wanted to kind of splurge for my son-in-law. So we set out in the stadium, but I got us access to the club.
Oh, the club level?
Could eat there. Yeah. We could eat there before the game. Okay. And first of all, there were a ton of Lions fans there all over the stadium, ton of them in the club.
That's disappointing.
That facility, first class.
Unbelievable.
Absolute. And the in and out of there, first class all the way. So props to them for that. I mean, I've been in very few environments that were cleaner, better run, better organized, nicer than what I experienced yesterday in Minneapolis.
Well, real quick before we move on to the topics we want to talk about is the last Final Four I attended, and you know that our boys and I love to go to the Final Four games, was pre-COVID 2019. And that was at that stadium, and we sat in the club level, and I couldn't agree with you more. The access to the restrooms, the dining was great. It was just a first-class environment all the way through. Even having access to a deck overlooking the city with fire pits. It is really, really well done.
It is. It's phenomenal. Well done by them. All right, so let's get into some of the topics you wanted to address here today. Let's talk about why you want to discuss home prices and this particular election. That was, by the way, that was a conversation my son-in-law and I had for quite a bit on the drive home yesterday. Just, again, their ongoing difficulty. He gets certain program advantages as a soldier, obviously, makes a good living as a soldier and in his job. So for a young couple, they make a pretty good living. They're already paying like $1,300 a month in their apartment that they're in. Okay. So they're thinking, why pay this much to somebody else for rent when we could pay about that and start building equity in something? But it's not an easy purchase, man, even for a young couple like that with the advantages that they have with his connections via the military.
Well, the reason I wanted to talk about Steve is exactly what Stephen and Anna are bringing up to you, is we get asked all the time at the Family Leaders, so when you're on the ground, what are you hearing? And we're in states like Wisconsin and Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Florida, obviously here in Iowa, in Texas. I think we're in 20 states right now, but those are the ones that we're really focused on. And so what we're doing is we're asking, what are you hearing on the ground? And typically what you're getting back is, well, it's all about abortion. And what you just said about in the state of Iowa. It seems like that's the only thing they have in their arsenals to go after Zach Nunn and others about their pro-life stance, right? But underneath that, what are you hearing at the doors? And even some of those voters that you think they would be Kamala Harris voters, they'd be Democrat voters, whatever it might be. Well, we're hearing at the doors, this home price thing is a real deal. And there's a stress of a dynamic here where people like you and Amy or Darla and I, even though we can make a lot of money on our home today, we don't want to sell our home because of what we'd have to buy or what we'd have to build, and it's out of the market price. So that takes homes off the market, which only exacerbates the problem that Stephen and Anna are facing and these others are facing. Also, these prices are artificially high. Interest rates are still high. But that is a dynamic that I think is going to play definitely into this presidential race, and especially in that blue wall, so to speak, the Rust Belt, where these people want affordable homes and they're not seeing it right now. And I think that's advantaged Donald Trump. And that's an issue that a lot of people aren't paying attention to right now in the presidential race, but we're hearing at the door, that's a big issue.
She is proposing, I think it's some form of means-tested $25,000 government grant to assist with a home purchase. I think that's one of the plans that she has put out there. I mean, is that resonating anywhere that you're seeing at all?
I don't think it's going to resonate. First of all, now you got the government involved, and $25,000 on a $400,000 home does not go very far.
Correct.
And the other part of it is,
for example, that's not even the 10% down payment that gets you out of paying. What's it called? The PMI, is that what it's called?
Right.
That gets you out of paying that. So correct. Yeah.
And the thing is, this is a Donald Trump thing, is that if this was such a great idea before, why hasn't it been implemented yet?
Exactly.
The thing is, what's the
Do it right now. Do it right now, for example. Yeah.
And what are the free market principles that would allow people to have ownership? And that is good jobs, availability, access, and lower interest rates. Those are the things that are going to drive that market.
I'm curious why you want to discuss global leadership. Because right now, almost everybody that's voting for Trump is tired of talking about global events, regardless of what their ideological background is, and think there's been way more emphasis placed on those things than what's happening here at home. But I'm curious why you want to bring that up.
Well, the reason I want to bring it up is that I'm looking at people that would typically be Kamala Harris voters, and why I think you're seeing a switch in the polls towards Trump. One is what we just talked about, that's the home prices. But two is there's an uneasiness going on. They're seeing Israel and Hamas, Israel and Hezbollah. They're seeing Iran. They're seeing Putin and Russia. That is another thing that's getting brought up at the homes today. And what it is, so these door knockers are coming back and saying, we need to have America to look like we have strong leadership again, so that this stuff isn't happening. They're sensing an unease here because of everything they're seeing on the foreign front. And so whether you like Trump or don't like Trump, what you have to admit with him is that we didn't have a foreign conflict when he was president of the United States. Two is he's unpredictable enough that even Kim Jong-un of North Korea is like, I'm not so sure I want to, Seder rabble this guy at all. And so that's another thing when you take a look at, okay, where would Kamala be strong, and why are some of these voters going for Trump? I think the home prices are one, and the economy. But two is, I think, when they're taking a look at the international scale, the international community is saying we want peace on our borders, as well as we want secure borders. So I think those two things are driving a wedge between Kamala and Trump, and moving some from Kamala, who typically be Kamala, towards Trump.
We were talking last week that the trend line of Trump winning by running one of the most, maybe the most anemically messaged pro-life platform for a Republican nominee ever. And then all these all these Democrats, Soros-funded abortion amendments all over the country winning. What that will do moving forward in the future for the clout of the pro-life, the pre-Roe, what you're watching right now is the death of the pre-Roe pro-life movement. That is what is occurring right now. That's dying. Okay. And marches in January and all the other stuff, that's all dying out. What's being determined, like the organization we just talked about, Preborn and other places, is what the post-Roe pro-life movement is going to look like. That's what's being determined. But that political paradigm, whether we can debate its success or not, but ultimately it did accomplish its final mission, which was the overturning of Roe. All right. So that's the end of that paradigm. And the pro-life movement and pro-lifers have got to figure out what will be the post-Roe paradigm moving forward. But continuing just to run the pre-Roe paradigm in a post-Roe world is a loser. And that's probably going to be a resounding verdict, sadly, 15 days from today. On the same token, though, what you just said about, for example, the border. When you've got Trump and JD both running openly on, hey, if you're here and you're not legal, pack your bags. And that's a literal talking point they're running on. If Trump gets north of 40 of the Hispanic vote running on that, because the great fear, like the day Marco Rubio called me and tried to lobby me for the Gang of Eight, it was all about, we're going to amnesty these people either way. And if we're not seen as being in favor of it, then they'll never vote for the other values they have with us in common, because they want to bring their family members here. And so they have their family members stay here. And so we have to bite the bullet on this, or this is going to be like the black vote all over again. That was the literal pitch Marco Rubio gave me on the phone a decade ago over Gang of Eight. Okay. Literal pitch he gave me on the phone in a one-on-one call. And on the other hand, if you get north of 40 of the Hispanic vote running on, if you're here illegally, pack your bags, that's a paradigm shift too moving forward, Bob.
It's a huge paradigm shift. And what it is that those people who immigrated here legally, one of the things they wanted was law and order. And so all of a sudden you say illegal immigration can run rampant. One is they're not following the same rules you had to follow, but now is where's the law and order to this thing? So I think Trump has the advantage there. I think, Steve, you're right on the pro-life thing as well, is that it could be a sad election night when it comes to the sanctity of human life and our messaging. And really what's going to end up is states like Iowa, organizations like the Family Leader, to really take a strong stance on advancing a culture of life within our state. And the other thing where I'd say where there's hope, say, if Trump gets to be president, especially if the pro-lifers turn out to vote, he's always been a transactional leader. He may deliver way more for the pro-life community as president than you anticipate right now, but I can guarantee you he's going to deliver way more for the pro-life community than, say, Kamala Harris is.
Final thing you wanted to address, we've got about 3 minutes here. Citizenship worthy of the gospel. What does that mean?
Well, that goes back to Philippians 1, verse 27, where Paul says, exercise your citizenship worthy of the gospel. As you well know, Steve, Paul used his Roman citizenship to his advantage several times, even to present the gospel in front of Caesar. So he knew that the people that were following him were also very concerned about what Rome was doing and how they could exercise their citizenship. What I'm saying here is that don't get caught up into the ideologies of, am I a Trump person? Am I a Kamala person? If you're a believer, you're a Jesus person. But the ripple effect of that is, it may be, I'm going to vote for Trump. Why? Because we believe this is the biggest contrast in worldview that we have seen in our lifetime. And if religious liberty is at stake, if sanctity of human life is at stake, if law and order is at stake, if me being able to provide for my family, whether it be housing or food or education, whatever is at stake, if it's gender common sense is at stake, there's some things that are really at stake here. And can you exercise your citizenship without being disqualified for the prize, which is you communicating the gospel? And we believe, yes, we can. And a good place to start is taking a look back at Paul, of being able to claim that I'm a Roman citizen, but I want to be able to communicate the gospel to you as well. So when we say look higher, think bigger, and expect more, we really mean it. Understand, where does your identity get latched to? And for believers, for us, that's Jesus Christ. The ripple effect may be we want to mobilize that church to invade the polling place, but let's vote for the most pro-religious liberty, pro-life, pro-marriage, pro-family candidate that there is.
We have some serious structural problems on the right that have to be addressed. Some serious ones moving forward. And one of the biggest problems we have, Bob, is it's human nature just to want to keep doing what you're used to doing, number one. All right, that's true in even the most principled and pious of situations. It's just human nature to, the dog returns to its own vomit, to follow the path of least resistance. But it's also been very profitable to a lot of people to continue moving down, keeping going with this same path. But what is very clear here, I got less than a minute. We have lost almost all of our perceived clout in this election. That is very clear. And it's also very possible that Trump has replaced those people that don't want to vote for him again. He's maybe has replaced them via Tulsi Gabbard and Elon Musk and things of that nature, which further waters down our clout moving forward. And we're going to have a very sober conversation within Christian conservative circles about what the future holds for us as a movement, faction, whatever you want to call us, because we're largely irrelevant right now, if we're being honest.
And Steve, I think that's where our model comes in. And what I get so excited about the family leaders model that we do through the Daniel Impact, the church is designed to be the timeless and prophetic voice to a culture. That means you can't have 37% of them who are registered, who attend church on a regular basis, but who sit at home. They need to get to the polls. They need to be the timeless and prophetic voice to the culture. Mm-hmm. It's also about the pastors, the shepherds of God's church, who still believe God's word to be true. Jesus is the way and not a way, to basically lead their flocks to the polls. I still believe Jesus, and I'm taking him at his word when he said, upon this rock I'll build my church. Gates of hell will not prevail against it. Remember where revival comes from. It's inside the house of the Lord. We need the churches. God's always used a remnant before. I believe he'll use a remnant again. But let's be that. Let's have citizen impact, electoral impact, policy impact, while not being disqualified for the gospel.